We go to item 5, you say briefing on study tour, stroke, just say stroke, fourth term program. Just need to talk about what item on that program for the fourth term. So, all right. We're not basically amending the agenda is as it was approved. I need to bring reflecting this edition in order to remember when I get to item number 5 that I need to say something on it. All right, colleagues, it's now 6 o'clock. Let's look at the attendance. Do you have the quorum, Nandipa?
Good evening, Chair. We only have 4 members, Chair.
Only have 4 members. All right, but I know some members will be coming in at any time. The NSOP, was there any session this afternoon?
I didn't see anything. I checked, Chair. There's nothing.
There's nothing. Okay. All right. No, it's fine. Let's start. So let me welcome all the colleagues on the platform. I also welcome the Deputy Director General of the Department of Transport. It's Mr. Mthunzi Madia. I'm not certain if the DG of the Department of Transport is in the meeting. I welcome you together with the team that is with you from the Department of Transport. You'll indicate if the DG is in the meeting so that I also properly welcome him as well. I saw the SECDEF is registered. She is welcome, warmly welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, SECDEF. From Armscor, I don't see Armscor. Don't see Armscor. They usually reflect as Armscor. I'm sure they'll be coming in at any moment because their item is later. So let me say you're all welcome. There's a hand. It's Thandiwe Mpondo's hand. Can I take your hand, Thandiwe?
Good evening, Chair.
Yes, Thandiwe.
Yes, my name is Thandiwe Mpondo. I'm a PLO in the Ministry of Transport. Chair, I had sent an email to apologize on behalf of the Minister and the Director General who will not be able to attend, but he has mandated the DDG Maritime, Mr. Mthunzi Madia, to lead the delegation.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, Ms. Mpondo. I had not seen the email, but maybe the Nandipa was going to deal with it when we get to apologies. But I think that is sufficient. We must thank the Minister for one, accepting the invitation, and then to sending his delegation to the meeting. Please convey my apologies to him. Let's deal with the apologies. Ms. Nandipa.
Thank you, Chair. There's an apology from the Minister of Defense and the Deputy Minister of Defense. They are both in the presidential task team engagement. And then after that, they will be catching a flight to Johannesburg at about 7:30. And then the other apology, which is the one that Mr. Mpondo just alluded to, is the one of the Minister of Transport and the DG of Transport. I don't have anything from the member side, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. There's just one apology from Ms. Lekwase. She's down with flu. I knew she had flu, but today she said even her son has caught flu, so she will not be in the meeting. Please just record Ms. Lekwase's apology. All right. So we've done the apologies. Let me just introduce the issues. Like we'll start with the
Chair.
Briefing by the department. Yes,
My
sir.
apologies, Chair.
Captain.
This is Rear Admiral Konto from the South African Navy headquarters in Pretoria. I'm representing Chief of the South African Navy, Vice Admiral Nobese.
Oh, okay. No, thank you very much. You are right. And it's just yourself, or there's a delegation you would want to introduce, Rear Admiral Mkondo?
Yeah, please, they will introduce themselves because I can see them, they're online, including Captain Zwane. Please, Captain and whoever is actually online, introduce yourself so that we can know exactly who's here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Admiral, Rear Admiral. Can I just get some indication from the Navy who else is in the meeting?
Good evening, Chair. Is Admiral Jabumboto. I'm with Admiral Mkondo, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Admiral Mboto. All right. I think that probably takes care of the thing. SecDef, are there any apologies on the side of the department besides the minister and the deputy minister?
No, besides that, Chair, we don't have any other apologies. I think the presentation that is going to be done on the item number 4, the service level agreement. We also have Mr. Pisdalibule, who comes from our defense material environment. And then we'll also have the colleagues that come from Armscor. So that's the team. I was told that we would also have a chief director responsible for maritime warfare, but I don't know whether that's what Admiral Mkondo does. So, and they said there may just be a possibility that the Navy would be able to join the meeting. However, whatever the case is, we have reps there for both items, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you very much. I've noted that SecDef. All right, colleagues, we can then move to the next item. But just before I call on the DTG Transport to take us through, let me just introduce the item. I would say that the South African Constitution mandates the SNDF to defend and protect the territorial integrity of the country and its people. It is the responsibility sorry, it is responsible. The SNDF is responsible for the protection of 4,471 kilometers land borderline, the airspace, as well as our territorial waters, which are covered by a coastline of about 3,000 kilometers from the Orange River in the west to Ponta do Ouro in the east. In territorial waters, South Africa's sovereignty is counterbalanced with the right of foreign shipping participation in our waters. So the DOT is responsible for the Merchant Shipping Act. It's Act of 1951, which regulates the participation of vessels in our waters, both foreign or locally registered, except the SNDF vessels. In line with its mandate, the DOT reported in 21-22 annual report that, I quote, a draft national maritime strategy was developed, close quote. Realizing that maritime security, a draft national maritime security strategy was developed, close quote. Realizing that maritime security is more than just port and vessel safety regulations, it extends to piracy, illegal fishing, terrorism, drug and trafficking. Sorry, drug and human trafficking, and environmental offenses. As you would notice, that this implicates a number of actors, especially in the law enforcement space. We thought it useful for the DOT to bring strategy of the Navy, whose responsibility it is to provide security in our territorial waters. So it is in that context that we have DOT in the meeting. I'm glad that the Navy is represented by Rear Admiral Mkhonto, who's leading the Navy, the delegation from the Navy is in the meeting, and as well as the SecDef, who's the overall head of the department. We had planned that next week we'll then take a briefing from the Navy, who will then indicate how they fit in with the national maritime security strategy, as it were. We're not expecting them to comment today. Theirs is to listen, and then in the next meeting, they fill us in. And so that is the context for the item. Having introduced the item, I would then invite Tunzi Madia to take us through the presentation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Nkosi. Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the esteemed members that are present. My name is Mthunzi Madia, as Chair has indicated. I'm from the Department of Transport, responsible for maritime transport. Chair, I had made some additional information on the presentation. I don't know if the Secretary can allow me to share that presentation after
Yes.
the engagements in the last few days.
Sorry, no, it's fine. It's fine. So you're saying you have an additional input. So is this part of this presentation, or it's a separate? It will be from a separate document.
It's well, we built on the presentation that we did two days ago. Yeah, if I can be allowed to share that presentation. Let me see if my technological.
No, that's fine. No, we did receive that the first one. Over to you. You may take us through that.
Slideshow. I'm not sure, Chair, if it does appear on the screen.
I only see your inbox, Mthunzi. Just do it again.
It says you are screen sharing now.
Is it? Maybe let me just. Maybe the problem is on this side. Colleagues, do you?
No, I don't think it's on our side, Chair. My apologies. It is screen sharing. It's just the wrong screen that is shared. So it is not the presentation or the information that is shared. It's a list of all these files that is shared.
Yes, you are right, Mr. Murray. Please do it again. Is this the one there is now one on the screen? Can you see that side there, Mr. Matia? Matia, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm with you, Chair. Yeah, can you see the screen now?
Yes, I can see it, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me go from the beginning. Thank you, Chair. I think maybe before we get into the presentation, it's important to inform the members that we are still working on the strategy. This is a living document. There are a number of consultations that we are still engaging on with all the relevant stakeholders. So this is not a final product. Our aim for this financial year is to get to the minister to sign the strategy, and then after which then we'll go to the cluster en route to cabinet so that it can be approved by cabinet. So we will talk on the principles of the strategy. We won't get into details because there's a lot of work that is being done as we speak that we're going to touch on as we go through the presentation. Chair, I think you have already alluded to the point that South Africa has plus or minus 3,000 kilometers of the coastline, and we need to develop her own maritime strategy to promote economic development with the significant trade routes on the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. South Africa receives about 14,000 vessels every year through our 9 commercial ports of the country under the management of Transnet National Ports Authority. So you can sense that we are a critical player when it comes to maritime activities. Besides, South Africa is a member state of the International Maritime Organization. We move more than 230 million tons of cargo in our ports as well. And about 90% of the global trade is carried by sea, And as such, maritime security is an integral part of the elements of law of the sea as one of the conventions, and enforcement of maritime laws, which basically it's our Bible, that is the Merchant Shipping Act, and an ISPS code, which came into being after the 9/11 tragedy in the US. I must also inform the chair and the members and colleagues that we are busy now with the Merchant Shipping Act. There's an overhaul. It went to cabinet in the last sitting of the cabinet, and then it was approved. So we will be now introducing this merchant shipping bill to Parliament so that it can go through all the stages. The purpose of doing this, we realize that our Merchant Shipping Act, which is obvious, is going to change part and parcel of our strategy, is that our Merchant Shipping Act hasn't been updated in the longest time. So we felt that if we want to be relevant so that we can be able to respond on many aspects of the act, we needed to do an overhaul. So we are fortunate and happy that the cabinet approved the bill in the last sitting of October. South African Maritime Zone, which is our exclusive economic zone of 200 kilometers, are rich in natural resources and have a potential to create jobs and improve livelihood of South Africans. And we say this in the back of our Oceans Economy Operation Pakistan project, which Department of Transport is also leading under marine transport and manufacturing, which basically is the port-based infrastructure, as well as the repair and the building of ships in our port systems. So the question now comes, why did we have to develop the strategy? Incrementally secure the ports, especially under ISPS code, coastal and ocean domain with reference to human and property security, trafficking and piracy, food security, illegal fishing, social cohesion, job creation, and sovereignty of the state. I think the chair did touch on the sovereignty of the state, which is under the Department of Defense. Create an institutional framework and governance protocol for coordinations and cooperations between different role players. So the strategy is the Maritime Transport Security Coordination Center, which is an institution that was developed to fulfill our international obligations. It sits under SAMSA, South African Maritime Safety Authority, our entity, and then it is located in Cape Town and Plattekloof. Part of its objective is to make sure that it secures our waters from environmental pollutions, safety of life at seas, and just to make sure that all the vessels that are moving in our waters are not doing illegal activities. So the mandate of this MSCC is to regulations and coordinations of maritime transport through transport lanes, implement, monitor, evaluate, and ensure compliance with International Maritime Organization conventions. The MSCC chair is the custodian of maritime security under Merchant Shipping Maritime Security Regulations 2004. Our primary responsibility is to make sure that we look after the merchant shipping vessels, to provide advisory to the stakeholders and government pertaining maritime security matters. This system, Chair, if you allow me, is a system that is able to track the vessels that are moving in and around our waters. We go as far as halfway to Brazil, go west side up to Ghana, come down to Atlantic Ocean, and go to the Horn of Africa. That whole area is coordinated by this system. If the vessel is doing illegal fishing, for example, we are able to detect. If it's discharging products that are affecting our environment. We are able to detect that. We will then coordinate with South African Defence Force to inform them that we think that there is an illegal activity that is happening at sea. Then we start to mobilize those resources. We also work closely with them, especially on the illegal fishing. They are able to dispatch their vessels, patrolling vessels, so that we can be able to catch those that are doing illegal things. Provides advisory to the stakeholders and government in maritime security matters, safeguard against unlawful interference with maritime transport in line with the Republic's obligation to safety of life at sea, convention, and international ship port facility security, which is the ISPS code. So Maritime Security Advisory Committee, which is basically the MSEC. I think when I talk about all the role players and stakeholders, including the defense, they form part and parcel of this advisory committee. Its main objectives is advise government on measures to enhance maritime security, facilitate engagement of maritime security matters with South Africa's counterparts and at national, regional, international level, including the IMO, identify threats and opportunities in the legislative and institutional framework and craft integrated maritime security strategy. Hence, we are doing an overhaul on the Merchant Shipping Act. Lastly, identify critical role players that may effectively contribute in enhancing maritime security and establish any working group for expeditious execution of the function. I think we will unpack this point particularly as we go along with the presentation. So this is the strategy, the National Maritime Security Strategy. The purpose of National Maritime Security Strategy is to incrementally secure ports, coastal and oceanic domain from the national and regional perspective to promote economic development, human security, cohesion, and sovereignty. We've got what we call the Maritime Master Plan, where we define the roles and responsibilities, including the shipping lanes plan, to make sure that we know exactly who's doing what where. The NMSS supports the intent and objectives of African Integrated Maritime Strategy, AIMS 2050, and which we are party to, and is in line with the South African Development Community SADC Maritime Security Strategy. These are the objectives, Chair and the esteemed members: to promote maritime awareness, education, and research. In fact, we've got a chief directorate within the Department of Transport that is focusing on the maritime infrastructure and development and industry development. Part of that work is to do a maritime awareness, create safe and secure maritime domain. South African Maritime Safety Authority is responsible for this function. Establishment of maritime focal point. The Department of Transport, in terms of the Merchant Shipping Act, we are the focal point with an IMO. We domesticate all the conventions that have been agreed upon at the IMO so that we remain relevant as a maritime nation. Marine environmental management, we work with other departments like DEF, strengthening maritime governance, optimize South African maritime economy through Operation Pakisa and other initiatives of government, enhance law enforcement regime on the ocean. So, principle of the strategy. We've got 6 principles under the preliminary work done has yielded this thus far, because there's been working groups that have been taking place. Maritime security is a key component of collective security that is integral for economic development. Such encompass broad topic covering many policy sectors. The following are generally accepted as an element of the maritime security regime. We may add on these ones when we finalize the work that we are currently embarking on. The first one is international peace and security, sovereignty, territorial integrity, political independence, security from crime at sea, resource security, environmental security, as well as security of seafarers and fishermen. There are a number of conventions that talk to this. My laptop has just frozen now. Okay. The NMSS progress thus far, because there's been the work that has been done. In fact, I should have mentioned that this at the earlier stage of my presentation, that there was work that was done. But when we started consultations, we really, some of our own stakeholders raised critical concerns with our first draft of the strategy. And there were recommendations made, particularly by Navy, to say our strategy was very operational. So we needed to beef it up. We subsequently appointed the University of Stellenbosch Military Center to assist and coordinate and strengthen our strategy. So that work is currently taking place. We've got a number of milestones that we have achieved. So the progress thus far, the Chair and the members, the Department of Transport requested an interdepartmental approach with South African National Defence Force to develop the NMSS in February 2022, early this year. Concurrence for collaborations between Maritime Transport Division and South African Navy, that was developed as well in February of this year. A team was therefore assembled from Stellenbosch Military Studies Division in the very same month, and then the MSEC working group submitted the draft NMS to the Stellenbosch. This was the work that we had done initially, which stakeholders felt that it was too operational. A workshop was then held at Stellenbosch to revisit the framework and consolidate further inputs. This was in July of 2022. A working group drafting is planned for the final product in February of next year. The final edits and the submission prepared for the sign-off before the end of the financial year. This is part and parcel of the work that we have committed as a Department of Transport to be finished in the 22-23 financial year. So I've spoken a lot about the stakeholders. So because we have acknowledged that the maritime environment is broad and encompasses diverse dimensions of strategic relevance, including economic, political or governance, legal or legislative, security, including safety, military, scientific, and technology, physical and socio-cultural. All government departments with maritime security obligations are represented at EMSA, and subsequent subcommittees and working groups for effective formulation for the policies and strategies. These are the stakeholders: SAMSA, Transnational Post Authority, SNDF, state security agencies, including NICO, South African Police Services, Home Affairs, Border Management Authority, DFFE, Department of Health, Department of International Relations and Cooperation. So these are the stakeholders that we are working with on this MSEC, as well as in the formulation of the strategy. So the way forward is working sessions between the MSEC working group and Stellenbosch Military Studies Division team to take place in mid-January. As soon as we come from the Christmas break, this will be taking place. Clean all operational areas from the strategy, align roles and responsibilities, which is very critical for the strategy, to newly established Border Management Authority, and include mitigations of strategic areas from the threat risk assessment. Appointment of maritime security expert to facilitate working sessions and consultative process. So a 3-day working session for relevant government department is going to take place in February next year to finalize all the inputs, consultation process, consolidations of input, revised draft by the end of February, and then submissions to the Minister of Transport and the Minister of South African Defence Force for adoption before the end of the financial year. These are the the chair that we have given ourselves to make sure that we finalize this way. Once we secure this signature, we will then start the process of particularly the security clusters to present the strategy so that we can get their inputs en route to cabinet. And this is going to form part and parcel of the work that the Department of Transport will be doing in 2023-2024 financial year. Okay, this is the end of the presentations, and I must thank the chair for giving us an opportunity to come and present the work that we have done, although it's still a living document. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matia. Colleagues, this is the presentation. Is it possible to circulate the latest presentation, because it's different from the one you have given us already? There's 1 or 2 slides that are, or 2 or 3 slides that are missing. It will help. Colleagues, let me check if there are any hands on the system. Mr. Marais, I can see your hand.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. Much appreciated for the presentation. It is really, I think it's the first time that we are interacting with you. And I mean, we are discussing so many times the relevancy of our work and that of our maritime, co-partnering with you and with other departments. I just want to start off for me by making sure about a few things. The SAMSA is an entity reporting to the department, if I'm quite right. MSCC and MSAC, what are their status? Are they divisions? Are they state entities? Are they some section company who the auditor must audit their financial statements? Just please tell us about those entities and where and how they fit in. And then just in terms of how you operate, how do you've said that you make sure that there's no illegal actions and activities on our waters, and the Navy has shown us, maps of how far our territorial waters, EEZs, etc., are from the coast, and that must be serviced. So, are you operating in that same areas as our EEZs, or is it different borders line that you are working with? Then your system, am I correct that you said that you are operating both SAMSA and the MSCC, and I suppose MSAC as well, from your Plattekloof basis? Is that correct? And then if so, which communication facility or radar facility do you use to keep track of what is going on our maritime area and the arena, if I can use that phrase? Is it via Silvermine, for instance, or are you using different ones? And then to follow what is going on the oceans, do you make use of satellite technology, or is it radar technology, or what is that technology that you are using to make sure that you know exactly who's on the waters, who is not supposed to be there, who has got approval? Do they have to apply or approach you for approval to sail in our maritime domain? How does that work? I just want to get to grips and understand how that process is working. Then when you make sure of things that should not happen on our waters, how do you operate? I know that the Navy has got vessels that is supposed to do patrols, but how do you do that? Do you work then just with the technology? Do you work in cooperation with commercial vessels or shipping lines? Or how do you operate on that? That I just understand where you fit in, and then specifically for me, it is important to understand the role of the Navy and also our Air Force 35 Squadron that is supposed to do maritime patrols and reconnaissance. How do they fit into this operation? And you know, how regular do you communicate? Is it every day? Do you just pass on information, or is it you know, kind of only when you think about that, or when it is absolutely essential? What happens in terms of the Southern Ocean islands, you know, where there are international treaties to take care of that part of the oceans as well? If you can just, you know, elaborate more specifically on the role of the Defence Force and in particular Navy and then 35 Squadron and other, you know, Air Force bases as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other hand. Let me ask my own questions. I'm happy that a cabinet in its sitting on the 19th of October approved the merchant shipping bill 22 to replace the Merchant Shipping Act of 1951. I'm happy that you are doing that. I don't know why we still had an old shipping, legislation that predates the 1961 Constitution and all other constitutions that came after that. I know it's been amended, several times. And this act, the 1951, it's a Union Parliament Act, was repealing and replacing the British Merchant Shipping Act of 1894. That's how old this shipping story is, this merchant shipping story is. But I had the occasion of looking at your act. I recognize you said that just now. I had the occasion of going through the act from page 1 right up to the last page. It's quite a lengthy piece of legislation. The purpose or the object of the act is to provide for the control of merchant shipping and matters related thereto. I've looked at the things, about 4 or 5 things that the act, is meant to cover. The act deals with the recording, registering, and licensing of ships, treatment of seafarers and cadets. It deals with the issues of safety of ships and life at sea, issues of courts of inquiry and courts, issues with the wreckages and the salvages, carriage of goods by sea, offenses, and so on. And from this act, you then developed the regulations that you are referring to here, the 2004 regulations. You call them merchant shipping, maritime security regulations. And I've looked at the regulations again from page 1 to the last page, and the regulations, they are only limited, okay, insofar as they require the maritime industry participants to develop maritime security plans. And the participants are port operators, port service providers, and port facility managers, as well as ships themselves, that the ships must have security plans. It means that the port operator must have security plans, port service providers must have port security plans, plus the ships. Those are, in the main, the maritime industry, what you call maritime industry participants. And the DG may direct that additional security measures be implemented or complied with. However, the DG may not give a security direction unless the DG reasonably believes that it may be appropriate to do so because an unlawful there's unlawful interference with the maritime transport. Or because, let me start again. However, the DG may not give a security direction unless the DG reasonably believes that it may be appropriate to do so because an unlawful interference with maritime transport is probable or imminent. So I was trying to understand the mandate within which you are crafting this strategy. That, of course, it cannot go beyond what you are mandated to do by the Principal Act as well as the regulations. Now, having said that, I now looked at page 5. If you just go to page 5 of your document, just page down to page 5. Page 5, yes. Page 5. You are on page 2 now.
Oh, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
Yes. You see, these are the principles of the strategy. Or elements of the principles of the strategy is international peace and security. But that is not in the what is envisaged in both the legislation and the regulations remember, legislation was passed in 1951. It predates our own constitution that gives a clear mandate to the SNDF. And also it goes beyond your 2004 regulations, which of course must be based on the 1951 legislation. Sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence, much beyond. Remember, I said it's about security plans for the port and for the ships and the port service providers. But this now, it's much wider than what is in both the Act and the regulations. Security from crimes at sea. I mean, your legislation deals with safety, not security in general. It deals with safety of ships and life at sea. And I can see here you're talking to crimes. I can tell you the crimes I'm talking about here. It's the other crimes that I've listed above. Drug, human trafficking, drug and human trafficking, tourism and terrorism and other things. Resource security, environmental security. And yes, environmental security insofar as the ship emitting, carbon, maybe in terms of, the issues that deals with environmental friendly approaches to, our business conduct. and security of seafarers. Security of seafarers as well as fishermen, I can say this neatly it fits in within the mandate. Would you want to comment on that? Am I wrong to say that unless the new legislation, that the bill that is proposed gives you a much wider mandate? And my fear is that your mandate is limited, but what you are proposing in the strategy is much wider than that. You may want to comment, but let me, before you comment, SecDef may want to.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've lost you. Can I come in?
SecDef, did you, I mean, were I not audible, colleagues?
No, Chair,
You were not
the last 10
audible.
seconds.
We lost you.
Oh,
So
okay.
on my side, Chairperson, you were continuously audible. I didn't lose anything from your
You didn't lose anything. Okay. So basically, in summary, I was actually saying, if I look at what is proposed in the strategy, the elements of the strategy appear to be much wider than the mandate given given by both the 1951 legislation as well as the regulations of 2004. I then said, unless maybe the new legislation gives them the mandate that takes care of these issues. Over to you.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson. I just thought that maybe I needed to raise one or two issues. I was actually going to also make reference to this slide on the principles of the strategy. If you look at the areas that are captured there, and also you look at the other slide that listed the other departments in the security cluster that have a role to play. I'm raising this point, Chair, because I think that from a process point of view, I'm a little bit worried, because if I heard correctly, is that the intention is that sometime by next year, February, which is literally a few months away from now, the Minister of Transport must have endorsed this, and then it comes to the JCPS cluster. And the Department of Transport actually is part of the JCPS cluster. Now, what we have learned, Chair, in the process is that if we don't get all the relevant departments from the get-go, then it becomes difficult when at least if a sectoral minister is approved and then we want to go back, because as you say, you know, all of us have specific mandate that is given to our departments based on the Constitution. And part of our mandate is to protect and defend. And defend is not only your air borders, your maritime borders, your land borders, but also cyber borders. So it helps. And in actual fact, when you do so in the beginning, we see that it saves us a lot of time as we move forward. So for me, I would have rather preferred a solution or proposed that it's better to actually front load the JCPS cluster where most of those role players sit, so that then they sit and do a comprehensive job. By the time it goes to the ministers, at least we know that every department is satisfied that their areas of coverage or the mandates that they are given are well taken care of. So I think from a process point of view, I would be slightly uncomfortable if it is done, endorsed and approved by the minister before it comes to others. And then you find that there are major issues that other departments raise, and it becomes a little bit difficult that we deal with that. The second issue, Chair, when I heard about this strategy, I had a discussion, a phone call with the acting DG of Transport at the time. And he was saying to me, but which of the maritime documents are you referring to? Because there are 3 of them. So it would be good that we have full view of all 3 of them, because there could be also probably areas of overlap, but also areas where other government departments can play their role. So that then at least when we look at it, let's look at it comprehensively. But when we do so, Chair, what becomes helpful with the process is that in the period of where we have scarcity of financial resources, we then see how our financial resources can be stretched for us to do a fantastic job. Because otherwise, if then we are going to bring, and I think in a way, at some stage, that's how we were dealing with the Border Management Authority, because then they came and then you see that this mandate is given to defense, and then now they say, okay, it has to go to the Border Management Authority. What does that mean then from an accountability point of view? So if we start all together, we move together, I think for me, it's going to actually assist us to move forward. Those were the points that I wanted to raise, Chair. And in the security cluster, one-stop shop, you have everybody there. You don't have to do round robin to everybody, so that then you make sure that they are all on board. But we also deal with areas of potential overlap. Those are the points that I wanted to raise, but I don't know whether the colleagues from the Navy may have issues to raise. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Over to you, TTG.
My apologies, Chair.
Yes, Admiral.
Yes, I'm challenged, technological. I can't find where I'm supposed to be raising the hand.
No. Oh, I see. No, it's fine. I would welcome that. I also had experienced the same problem earlier. Over to you, sir.
Yes, thank you, SecDef. Thank you very much for your input. TTG Mtunzi, there are a lot of gaps in your presentation, and not necessarily that I'll be looking at the presentation as such. We got involved into drafting this strategy, and we pick up a lot of challenges. As you know, that your director, Metsi Ralipenya, was part of the team that was working on this. After 10 years that we battled to get the strategy drafted, I asked now Metsi Ralipenya to say, please, can we get now academics in military academy? This is where we've got much more influence, where we can get now academic and more expertise, and where we get maritime security experts that can be able to assist us academically and otherwise. So that part has not been exhausted. And now I see that there is a progress that has been made from our side. We have not observed those. Since we engage with military academy, the professors are still waiting for the South African Navy and Maritime Transport to engage them further. This is actually puzzling us, and the Chief of the Navy today, I briefed him about this, and he said, how far did you go? I said, we have some challenges. We couldn't actually come into terms in terms of now getting the direction with the maritime transport, let alone engaging with the other maritime security stakeholders. We have not done that thoroughly. And I'm surprised that we made so much progress without actually doing what we have planned to do. At some stage, there was funding challenges. We requested Secretary of Defense to look at this matter. We have not further engaged on that, whether there is funding, no funding, to get now military academy to assist us. There is a draft, but the current draft that was drafted between the South African Navy and the Maritime Transport was very shallow. It was not so much inclusive of other maritime security stakeholders. So that's why we went to military academy to get these maritime experts and academics to assist us. But there was no movement on that. So now I'm challenged to observe that the maritime transport is indicating that there was progress. We don't know about that progress. And if I can go further and say maritime stakeholders, can they actually agree to this progress? Most of them, they will say no. Now we'll suggest that the DDG Mtunzi, please, let's have a meeting. Honorable member Marais is actually can attest to this, because when we engage further to consult with other member states outside SADC, they advise us on how to approach this. And he was there, and myself, I was there. And now we were expecting now to further engage the maritime transport. We did not get that opportunity. So now I will just now request that DDG Mtunzi to make sure that you include the other maritime security stakeholders. And as I don't take away that you are a custodian and process owner of maritime security, but we need to be as inclusive as possible. I don't attack per se the presentation. The presentation for me it's okay, but I'm still waiting for maritime transport to come and engage us, and to make sure that the progress that we actually envisage is actually goes according to the plan. We plan that we need to get the academics from Military Academy, University of Stellenbosch, to come and assist us. I'm still waiting for that. I don't know what is actually happening. I was expecting that to be exhausted first before this presentation. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Secretary of Defense. Thank you, Chair. That is my input and my frustration with the drafting of the strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Over to you, DDG.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the inputs. It was going, Chair, to be a challenge present this work that we are busy with. Maybe I need to give a bit of a background. We received invitations to come and present to this committee. And from our side, we were reluctant to come because we knew that there's still a lot of work that we need to do, and the work that we are still engaging on. This is by no means a final product of the strategy. I will safely say probably we are sitting at 60%, because the chunk of the work that needs to be put together and consolidated is being done by the University of Stellenbosch Military Academy. So ideally, Chair, we would have been in a better position to come and present somewhere in February, because at that time, the concerns that are being raised to say we are not consulting, we are going ahead, we would have done all those consultations. Remember, the issue of us having to work with the University of Stellenbosch Military Academy was precisely of the comments that have been made. Because the very first draft, maybe I should also just address the issue of 3 documents. The first document was developed by the state security on behalf of the MSEC. That document was circulated. There were serious concerns raised by the military to say the strategy or the document was very operational. The previous speaker is correct to say that triggered the engagement with the university to say, let us bring in the academic element on the strategy so that we can beef up our strategy so that it can be comprehensive. So that's where we are. The gaps that are being raised is because the work is probably 60% complete. We are not any closer to finishing this work. If I come, Chair, back to the principle of the strategy, remember, Chair, I said we are a focal point. By no means we are taking over the responsibilities of certain departments of government. The IMO, in terms of when they did the audit, they realized that South Africa also lacks the security, the strategy, the maritime strategy. We had to convene and coordinate that particular function, or we are still coordinating. The international peace and security is by no means our role and responsibility. In my presentation, I was very clear when I said part of the work that is being done by the university is to make sure that the roles and responsibilities lie with the relevant departments and government agents, so that we can be able to take ownership. For example, if you look at the security of seafarers and fishermen, it's our responsibility. We are busy currently with the Marine Court of Inquiry, where we lost about 6 fishermen in part of the Eastern Cape about 4 years ago. Minister has signed the Marine Court of Inquiry as we are required by the Act. That falls directly on our doors. We talk about environmental security. Environmental security is the dumping of illegal substances at sea. The MCC that I spoke about is able to detect if the vessel was moving at 14 knots, immediately it comes down to 5-6 knots. The system is able to track that vessel. We can see the name of the vessel, where it comes from, where it's going. Even if they were to switch off the self-identification systems, we are still able to track that particular vessel. If you talk about the security from crimes at sea, I think 2 years ago, we were able to pick up a fishing vessel in and around in Saldanha through the very same system, which was carrying drugs. We don't have a capacity to confront such. We will mobilize, we'll contact the SAPS, the defense, to go and arrest that particular vessel. By the way, South African Maritime Safety in terms of its act is able to arrest the vessels and then detain the vessels up until then the matter is resolved. So I just want to give members comfort, a sense of comfort, that this strategy is not by means that we are trying to take over the responsibilities that is dedicated to certain departments. So here is correct to in terms of the objectives of the Merchant Shipping Act. Our scope of work is confined to the merchant vessels in terms of safety, the welfare of the seafarer. We make sure that if the seafarer is sick, we deploy the resources for that particular seafarers to be taken on board the vessels and taken to the hospitals, the nearest hospitals. It talks about the design of the vessels. There are a number of things. That sphere is confined within the Maritime Department, but any other matter we coordinate. So let me go back to the Regulations 204, which specifically is an issue of the ISPS code, which came into being after the 9/11. Because when the US was doing their risk assessment, they realized that through the terminals in the ports, because remember the port remains a landlord, but there are a number of terminal operators that are operating. But if there's no synergy between the Ports Authority, which is the landlord, and the terminal operators in terms of the security plans, that port is exposed. So one of the main functions and objectives of the ISPCOS is to make sure that there's an alignment in terms of the security plans of the terminal operators, which must be approved by the Ports Authority, so that you make sure that the Ports Authority and that particular port is secured. Let me go back to the first questions, the roles of the MSEC, the roles of MCC, the roles of SAMSA. In terms of the Act of SAMSA, which is SAMSA Act 5 of 1988, SAMSA has 3 objectives: to ensure safety of life and property at sea, which is covered under the principles of the strategy; to prevent and combat pollution from ships in the maritime environment, which talks directly to environmental security, resource security, the principle of the strategy to promote the Republic's maritime interest. Those are the 3 mandates that have been given to SAMSA for its existence. So there was a question that was asked on what is the role of the MSEC? Who is the MSEC? MSEC is an advisory committee that was established in terms of the regulation 132 of the Merchant Shipping Act, which is comprises of different departments. You've got Navy on the MSEC, Home Affairs, Border Management Agency, Port of Health, SARS, SAPS, State Security, Department of Transport is chairing, SAMSA, NPA, and International Relations and Corporations. So it's a statutory structure which is chaired by the department to advise the government on the measures to enhance maritime security, identify threats and opportunities in the legislative and institutional framework, and craft integral maritime security strategy, and so forth and so forth. We are a coordinator of that because that's what the Act says. So the MSCC falls under SAMSA. It functions as one of the units that under SAMSA as we speak. I think I've spoken at length in terms of what it does. It does that on behalf of South Africa. They'll be able to detect illegal activity. They'll be able to detect if there's a loss of life, a potential loss of life. They are the ones that will phone Air Force to say, please deploy the resources. They are the ones that will activate National Sea Rescue to say there are fishermen that are drowning. So it coordinates. That system is managed 24 hours a day. If you go to the facility now, you'll find that there are trained officials that are monitoring all the movements of what is happening in our coastal, in our coast. So there was another question, whether do they operate beyond our exclusive economic zone? The answer is yes. That's why I indicated, Chair, that we go as far as halfway to Brazil or South America, come to the Horn of Africa, go up west to Ghana, go to the Antarctica, because that is the area that we have been given or mandated by the IMO, International Maritime Organization, to make sure that we oversee that particular space. So what happens when the vessels are coming into our port system? Our standard operating procedure, we are informed 96 hours before the vessel enter our exclusive economic zone. We need to know where is the vessel coming from, what is carrying, who are on board the vessel, which port is going to call at, from South Africa, where the vessel is going, and other in terms of the weight of the vessel, etc., etc., etc. That information, when we receive that information, we then send it to the net joint so that they can verify and do their security screening of the vessel. As the vessel approaches our waters, if everything is well, we'll get a green light to allow the vessels to come our water. So that role sits with the Department of Transport. It's our officials that are approving the vessels 96 hours before they come into our port. So the MSEC is a statutory body. It does not have a board. It's constituted by a number of departments. SAMSA is responsible for the MSCC, which is situated in Cape Town, to make sure that we provide that type of service. The satellite and radio technology. The question becomes too technical for me, but I know that we use satellite, we also use radio technology. We use the very same systems that the captain of the vessel, because if one fails, they should still be able to communicate with us. But at any normal day, satellite is the system that is being used to communicate with the vessel. we are able to communicate with the captain anywhere in the space that has been allocated, that is allocated to us as a country. So we've got that capability to do that. The role of defense, we activate defense if we see that there's a threat, we suspect something, we need to save lives at sea as one of the Solar Convention, one of the fundamental existence of the IMO, to make sure that the safety of life at sea is observed, and share the information, whatever information that they want from us. Maybe they want a database, they want to analyze what is happening in our waters, how many vessels are moving through our coastlines. We are able to provide that information. So, but we do not take away the responsibility, because when it comes to the illegal fishing, that is a deaf space. They've got 5 patrolling vessels that they must dispatch. How do they know? Because MSCC will make that information available to say, please go and make sure that. In fact, we have signed with Mozambique, Angola, as well as Namibia, because what will happen before, they will be on our waters fishing illegally. The moment then they realize that they're being chased away, they'll run away to Namibia. Once they enter the Namibian waters, in terms of jurisdiction, we don't have anything that with that particular vessel. But there's an MOU that has been signed that you can chase them into Angola and then you arrest them. So that's, I'm not sure, Chair, if I've covered most of the questions that have been raised. Thank you very much.
I think you have. Well, look, Mr. Mare, I can see you still have your hand up. I'm not too sure if it's new hand or it's an old hand.
No, it is my hand. Thank you very much for the explanation. That has certainly been very informative to me, because this is the first time that we are interacting with the department on this specific matter. I want to, what is important for me is that clearly here's an entity or a department that is working, that is obviously it's an enormous challenge. However, what I picked up from our Navy is exactly what my concern was. Where do we fit in? What is expected from us? When, how, you know, all those matters. And that clearly indicates to me that there's still a hell of a lot of work to do. Yes, eventually all of us work into one direction. We have got one constitution, legislation must be aligned to that, and then there's different stakeholders. I think it's just very, very important for us as the Joint Standing Committee on Defence to exactly know where does the SANDF and specifically the Navy and the Air Force fit in, what is expected from us, how will this be funded? Is it from the Defence Force budget or is it the Department of Transport budget? And then obviously I fully agree, you know, the one session you will remember, Chair, that session in Stellenbosch that you eventually couldn't make, and which I was very privileged to attend. That gave us an enormous view of what should be done, what can be done, and that there's no hard issues for us. I think we have got the knowledge, we have got expertise. We must just bring them together. And I support the Admiral 100% in what he has said, and that we have to talk to each other, because there's eventually it will still be Department of Transport, but there will be certain mandates and then each party and each department and each stakeholder must know exactly where do they fit in, what is expected from us, and what is the obligations and the rights in this matter. So if we can forward that to, say, beginning of next year, you know, it'll be enormous good if we can have another session like this and to see how far we have come and whether all the stakeholders in the Navy. The Admiral knows exactly the shortcomings, and the constraints in the Navy. And then depending on the expectations, we must obviously bring those things together. But the funding, is it SNDF funding? Is it Department of Transport funding? How will we do that? Because that will address a major concern of us. Thank you very much.
Yes, no, thank you very much. DTG, it was not that I was actually saying there's a takeover. Not that. I was actually looking at the participation of the other role players, including the Defense Force, especially the Navy. I mean, if there's an issue of funding and the question is directed at transport, I'm asking myself, but the Defense Force will play 70 to 80% or plays 70 to 80% of its role in the territorial waters of South Africa, especially on security matters. It can go up to between 70 and 80%. Leaving you with about 20%, 15 to 20%. As I said, because you are limited only by your own legislation in terms of your participation in the whole scheme of things. And I then pointed out the areas that are not your mandate, are the SNDF stroke Navy's mandate, of course, plus other law enforcement agencies. But I don't seem them to be co-leading the process in terms of, or taking a core responsibility in terms of funding the process, getting to know where it is and not wait until you get invited by us, them knowing because they are integral part of the whole thing. So I got a sense in the presentation that the Defense Force left the whole thing to you. And you can say yeah or no or on that one, but I would still accept whatever answer you are giving me. But the Brazilian Navy, what you call maritime security, was driven by its Navy. The Indian was also driven by its own Navy. I'm looking at the Chinese now, who is actually leading in that respect. But I would assume that in most countries, Navy is basically leading because they have a bigger responsibility, in the scheme, as it were. So I thought I should just raise this so that you should not be alone in it, but you should have these other colleagues. But we have the appointment set with the Navy on next week, just to get a sense of what is it that they are doing to ensure that this is, how they are contributing into the whole thing. So I think we're happy with the presentation you've made. And but I think you are too optimistic if you speak February 2023 or mid 2023, around June 20, going to be approved. This new shipping bill to be made into law, but that's not the only document you are for grounding the strategy on. You are also for grounding the strategy on the responsibility of the Defense Force and other this before we move, and thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. Indeed, there's a lot of work that needs to happen. In fact, Chair, we did an audit in terms of our capacity for SAMSA to discharge its mandate fully. And we need about 8 billion rand to have patrolling vessels, to have equipment, latest equipment, technologically, physical infrastructure, to make sure that we properly discharge the mandate of South African Maritime Safety Authority. So what did we do then as a department? We are busy with the bill now, the Maritime Development Fund bill, where we are proposing to tax all the vessels that are coming into our ports. We are proposing, I think, 0.5% of the activities that are taking place. And then maybe over a period of 7 to 8 years, we'll be able to capacitate SAMSA so that we take this burden. The Navy and South African Defence Force can focus on what they should be focusing on. For example, if there's a drowning vessel or there's a sick seafarer, we shouldn't be bothering South African Defence Force to use their resources to go and salvage that. We should be able, as a maritime nation, to have a capacity to dispatch our own helicopters on board the vessel and be able to offer a support. We've got a vessel that is monitoring through the third party, that is monitoring all the vessels that are moving through our coastline. We pay probably 500 million over a period of 5 years as we speak, because that is our international obligation. If the vessel is struggling, we dispatch that particular vessel to go and salvage that vessel. So that firstly, we don't pollute our waters. Secondly, to save lives. So the roles and responsibilities are very clear in terms of what is it that we are supposed to be doing. So being optimistic, Chair, I think I think colleagues from SAND, South African Defence Force, can attest to this. We've been working very well with them through the MSEC, and we don't foresee any challenges in terms of coordinating the work that we do. And like I had indicated, this was always going to be difficult for us to give a convincing strategy here, presentation, when a lot of work is still outstanding, especially when we define the roles and responsibilities. Once you define the roles and responsibilities, it's easier to know who should be taking financial obligations, to what extent. So as we're sitting here now, we should have that answer come February, March of 2023 to know exactly who is doing what and then what are the responsibilities that are attached to that. But for now, I will plead with our colleagues that we are working with on the MSEC to make sure that we meet the deadlines that we have set ourselves, because these deadlines were committed by the MSEC members to say by this time we think we will have achieved 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's why, Chair, I still feel optimistic that we'll be able to do that. But we are not going to do this without consulting the security cluster. I think this was supposed to be an internal document approved by the minister so that we can go out there and engage properly with all the government structures that have interest on the work that we are doing. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Chair.
No, thank you very much. Set yourself out to do, and we wish all the stakeholders who are participating in crafting this to ensure that the work is speeded up. In fact, the strategy is not something we need for tomorrow. It's something we should have long had, given the challenges that confront us and the fact that about 70% of our economy comes through the port. With that, we really thank you very much. We're pleased that work is happening, even though we don't have the thing, but we are still, we have not dropped the ball as a country. With that, we thank you, DTG, and convey our appreciation to the DG and the Minister. All right, having said that, colleagues, we can then, your DG, your team, you are free to exit the system as and when you think you feel to do it. All right.
Thank you, Nonkosi. Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. All right. All right, let's quickly move to the next item. It's the presentation by the DOD on the service level agreement. We thought we should call the DOD to come and talk to us about the agreement they have with Armscor. In all the meetings we have or we've had with Armscor, they report on performance indicating that on this they're at 95% and that we're at 85 or 100%, whatever it is. But we never get to know what services that the department, the client, has tasked them to procure in any financial year. Even if it is a multi-year project that they are busy with, but the funding will be made available yearly, and they must report on the milestones yearly. You will have work that is multi-year and work that is that can be finished in any 1 year. Now, because we don't know, I mean, the reason for the existence of Armscor is to procure services on behalf of the department or the SNDF as the client. And what are these services that in this year they are meant to procure? I'm raising this point because, I mean, if you look at the funded, the Armscor presented in July 2020, they made a presentation. They gave us information on the funded DOD capital projects, for example. They said in 2018, 2019, they had 39 capital projects. That was before budget cuts. And then 39 after the budget cut, excluding the rollovers, and 47 after the budget cut, including the rollovers. In other words, including the rollovers, the projects moved from 39 to 47. That is for 2018, 2019. In 2019, 2020, they had 40 projects, and after the budget cuts, including rollovers, they dropped from 40 to 18. And after the budget cuts, including the rollovers, so they were able to push the number from 18 to 39 because they were rollovers. At least you get a sense of the amount of work or the projects that they were seized with in that financial year. If you go to 2021, they said before the budget cuts, they had 30 projects, and after the budget cuts, including the rollovers, sorry, after the budget cuts, excluding the rollovers, they dropped to 14. And after the budget cuts, including the rollovers, the 14 that's in now, you include the rollovers, the 14 moved to 35. And then in 21, 22, that's what was projected because the presentation was done in July 2020. So we're still in 2020, 2021. But the projection was that in 21, 22, before the budget cuts, they projected they would have 29 capital projects funded by DOD. But the number dropped to 0 after the budget cuts and excluding the rollovers. And then again 0. After the budget cuts, including the rollovers. That was what was reported last time. Notwithstanding, of course, the fact that they were still funding the other projects, those 3 that we have been talking about or have spoken about. Now, in view of the number of funded projects dropping, in view of the number of funded projects dropping, I mean, projects that were to be terminated, that's a report they presented last time, to terminate mobile and static communication network, deployable electronic warfare system. Those are the projects that with funding they were going to do. Of submarine torpedo, mobile air picture, static electronic warfare, sea mine warfare capability, field artillery gun for South African Army, chemical biological defense system, submarine, I just want to underline this one, submarine midlife upgrade, and the geographic system for the SA Army, demolition and disposal capability for SA Navy. I also want to underline this one again, South African Navy frigate midlife upgrade, anti-tank systems, and so on. Of course, the significant projects that will have contractual obligation, but with no funding on the SCAMP during 21-22 was Project Eurofester, Project Hotel, and the Project Bureau. So I think they had to prioritize their own budget to be able to at least do some work on those 3. So now I'm saying I'm trying to understand now their performance. If they say it's our performance, it's 95%. Against what is it that I can say, I can go out and say Armscor was able to deliver as services to the department? Whereas when we get information that an aircraft that the president was meant to use got grounded, and this and that aircraft grounded, this vessel is not operational, and so on and so forth. So we want to be part of, to be made to understand what is it that DOD is tasking them to do in any financial year. It was in that context that we asked for DOD to do the presentation. Armscor will be presenting to say, well, on capital projects, it's 95% performance. On contractual projects, we're at 95%, but we not get to do of when you were asked to do what, that you claim this high percentage of performance. I'm sure you have heard me. I thought I should introduce this in case it's not clear what is it that we were looking at. This matter has been coming up in the committee, but I thought I should summarize it. Over to you, Secretary, you may introduce the matters.
Thank you, sir. I'm not sure if I should speak or should wait for SecDev to introduce.
Chairperson, I am here. We have the colleagues from Armscor that are going to do the presentation. And the person who's talking here is Mr. Livilo from the DefMat environment. So we can look at those and then have the discussion thereafter.
What is his name, SecDef?
Peter Livilo.
From where?
From the defense. From the defense material environment.
Or from the defense.
It is the structure to which we actually give taskings to Armscor.
Oh, yes. No, thank you very much. All right. Over to you. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Maybe we start with Armscor and then follow with the other ones, Chair.
All right. Okay, Armscor. I don't know if I'm still at the meeting. Maybe let's go back to was it Kopano Peter Lebelo?
They have just unmuted themselves. I think they were muted all along, Chair. I see they've unmuted themselves.
All right.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Mishak Jeffo. I'll be presenting on what the committee requested us to present on the Armscor DOD service level agreement. Chair, I heard you loud and clear. I think we need to just give a bit of context before I deal with the contents of the service level agreement. Chair, every year through the office of the Mr. Libelo, we are given requirements. It's a wide-ranging requirements, from all the arms of services. So in terms of the service level agreement, we'll then agree on the key performance indicators, which I will deal with later. And all these key performance indicators are then reported to the DOD on a quarterly basis. Chair, going into the introduction, in terms of the service level agreement, as you know, the services provided by Armscor to the Department of Defense are in accordance with the Armscor Act. So this is a legislative requirement. That's what the Act enjoins us to do. The service level agreement between Armscor and the DOD, as I said, reflect the scope of services to be provided by Armscor based on the legislated role and functions of Armscor in terms of the Enabling Act, the Armscor Act. The service level agreement is valid for a period of 4 years and is reviewed and updated during the last year of the contracted period or whenever circumstances so require. The current service level agreement is signed by the Secretary for Defense and the CEO of Armscor, and this was concluded on the 26th of March and is therefore valid from 1 April 2022 to 31st March 2025. In addition to the detailing of the scope of services to be provided by Armscor, the service level agreement contains a number of key performance indicators, which I will deal with later, that have been negotiated and agreed to between Armscor and the DOD. And Armscor is then measured against those key performance indicators on a quarterly basis. The percentage and the quantum of each of the objectives, that is the target, is therefore negotiated with the DOD and are valid for the period of the SLA. I will then deal with the performance indicators, what those are, Chair. What we are measured on is the percentage of capital requirements that are converted into orders. We are further is the execution of capital contracts as measured through the actual cash flow on the orders placed by Armscor. We are further measured on the percentage of system support and procurement requirements converted into orders by Armscor. Further, we are measured on the execution of system support and procurement contracts, as also here measured through the actual cash flow on orders placed by Armscor. You'll see the target, Chair, on all these key performance indicators as agreed with the DOD is at 95%. Further, the average time taken to convert these requirements that are referred to into orders from receipt of requirements to the placement of contracts, what we call orders, is categorized into three. One, for the general defense account, the GDA funded commercial of the shelf procurement using the shortened tender period, we have agreed that the turnaround time will be 90 days, that's the target. For the general defense account on non-commercial of the shelf procurement and product support, that is the repair and maintenance, we have agreed that the turnaround time will be 120 days. And for the special defense account funded, that is the capital acquisition program, we have thus agreed with the DOD that it will be 140 days. On the value of the defense industrial participation, credits granted as and when we place capital projects where the defense industrial participation applies. This is measured against the planned value of the credits. The target is 100%. On the technology requirements, the percentage execution of technology requirements measured against the contractual milestone or the deliveries thereof, as agreed in a memorandum of agreement between Armscor and the various services. Equally here, we have agreed that the target will be 95%. Chair, all these key performance indicators and how we have performed against these agreed goals. This is audited by our own internal auditors and later on audited by the Auditor General of South Africa. Going on to the dockyard, similarly here, Chair, in terms of the percentage of project tasking and job cuts executed, we have agreed with the Navy that it will be 90%, as well as the percentage of compliance to project finance, which is measured against the approved financial authorities and the cash flow plan. When it comes to the execution of the ancillary services, which is measured against the dockyard business plan, the target is 95%. The percentage of training requests executed, Chair, we have agreed with the Navy that it will be 100%. Similarly, the compliance reporting on all these key performance indicators is thus set at 100%. What is our performance, Chair, against all this, against the performance goals? As I've indicated, all these goals are at the end of every fin year. These are being validated by the Auditor General. The figures reflecting on the screen now are our own assessment of how we have fared. Firstly, with the percentage of capital requirements converted into into orders rather. As I indicated, the target is 95%, and our own assessment tells us that we have exceeded the target. The capital contracts, the cash flow, similarly here, Chair, the target here was not rather met due to delays in project where contractors are experiencing financial difficulties. And I must hasten to mention that the project in question, a project package wherein it talks to the procurement of generators as well as Project Hotel, which is the hydrographic vessel which is being executed down in Devon. On the percentage of system support and procurement requirements that are converted into orders, as I've indicated in the initial slide, the target is 95%. And our own assessment informs us that we have exceeded the target. The system support and procurement contracts cash flow, the target of 95 has also been exceeded. The average time taken to convert DOD requirements into orders, I have indicated right at the outset that is divided into 3 categories: the COTS, commercial of the shelf procurement, the non-commercial of the shelf procurement and support, as well as capital projects. You'll see on the commercial procurement, the target of 90 days. Chair, we did not meet this particular the target, and the reason being the repeated no bids, wherein we issue requests for bids, and when bidders respond, when we evaluate, we find that bidders do not comply to the value system generated in the request for bid in the tender document itself. The defense industrial participation, the Chair, there is an expected underperformance here. I think in the main here is due to the Damon, the Biro, the execution of the Biro contract by Damon. They have in the earlier years far outdone themselves in terms of the discharge of the deep obligation. So therefore, in the outer years, we are going to experience a lot of under performance. On the execution of technology requirements, our own assessment tells us that we have not met this particular target due to delays in the procurement and delivery of required specialized equipment. On the AG report, as this report measures as at the end of October 2022, the particular performance indicators will only be assessed or evaluated by the Auditor General, as I indicated at the end of the financial year. Lastly, I'll deal with the dockyard performance against the service level agreement as at the 31st of October 2022. In terms of the percentage of project tasking in job cut executed, the and mainly the critical enablers were still in a major issue in the execution of projects and ad hoc activities. And most of these activities were deferred until the enablers are available. But I can assure the committee that these enablers we are referring to cranes, spares, and materials that are used in the execution of various projects in the dockyard. But we have managed to procure some of these enablers, and work is progressing as intended. And we are of the view that the objective, the target, will be met at the end of the financial year. The percentage of compliance to project finance, there's been a gross underperformance, but we also envisage that going forward by the end of the financial year, we should be able to meet that particular target. When it comes to the other key performance indicators, the ancillary services, the training requests, as well as the reporting requirements here, you would see from the presentation that those have been exceeded. The Chair, members of the committee, that brings us to the end of our presentation on the service level agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Let's take the presentation on the task stroke, the projects that were to be undertaken in the period. You tell us which period you want to talk. I mean, the presenter wants to talk to. Secretary, you please introduce Lebelo. I think it's now it's down as a chief director. Acquisition material. I guess that is that. That position was, yeah, that position was vacant for a very long time. Is it now filling the position full time, or is acting in the place of?
I think what you are confusing it with, the Chair, is the DDG post of CDEF Met. DDG for Defense Material. This one is a chief director. The one which used to be occupied by Zondi.
Zondi, and before Zondi, I think it was General Mbuli at some point.
I'm not so sure, but this one is a chief director. So it's occupied by Mr. Livilo, but then they will still have the CDEF Met one, which is still vacant.
Okay, that's fine. All right. Over to you.
All right, thank
you. Lebelo.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Thank you, SecDef and members of Armscor for allowing us to also take you through what we think. Our presentation is similar to the one of Armscor. I'm not sure if we should give that presentation or try to respond to some of the questions that you asked, and maybe ask questions or respond to some of the issues that Armscor has presented.
Chair, I think that what I would have suggested is that if there isn't anything to add, because the SLA is between DOD and Armscor, and as it was alluded to earlier on, is that these also get audited by the Auditor General. Unless then there's something different that we want to add in relation to the presentation made, I would rather, maybe if there isn't anything additional, then maybe we take the questions and then respond to those ones. I think that would work better.
Okay, Secretary, if you could just indicate the project stroke task or services expected to be procured by Armscor with clear funding for this financial year, 2022-2023. It may be continuing projects which are multi-year and the new projects, so that we get a sense of what you ask Armscor to do in this new financial year, against which they'll be reporting the performance at the end of the financial year.
Maybe I can come in here and explain a bit. Okay, first, our structure is such that we have a DDG reporting to the SecDef, which is Chief of Acquisition or Chief Defense Material. Below Chief Defense Material, there's two structures of Chief Directors. One is specifically on acquisition, on looking at capital projects. I am on the side of looking at normal systems, support, and mods, which is military off the shelf, and the commercial off the shelf projects that were taken to Armscor. With this challenge of funding that has been declining for a long time, we find ourselves not being able to continue to support the new projects or projects that are incomplete, which leads to the Defense Force maintaining their old systems that are there. So Armscor is busy with maintaining the existing systems. Other than buying a new system, we would have to maintain those old trucks of the Army because there's no Vestula. So that is what Armscor is doing. And most of them come in maybe hundreds every day from every service of saying, I am not able to secure or to procure a new system through a project. Let me maintain my existing structures that is out there. This may not sound like it's a lot of work for Armscor, but it is a lot of work because now, other than doing one big system, they're doing a lot of subsystems. They were supported mainly by the OEMs like Denel, but with no Denel in the system, they have now to go to the subcontractors and try to get them to buy all those subsystems and find a system integrator that will acquire or will put together all the systems that are acquired. I think where Armscor misses the link is they report the same way as if we have the same number of capital projects that we had. If we had less, 95% is not the same as 95% of 50 or 100. So it's 90% of one or of two. So they must focus on where the workload is. That is where we're doing most of their work, and then they have to elevate that one because you may easily achieve 95% of one project. But of all those many ones where they've delayed, that is where they say that they were not able to get bids in time because some of the companies that would respond did not respond in time. But to me, I would say the professional acquisition structure, they have to do market research. They have to anticipate. They have to know what will come out of the market before the market gives them what they have. If they don't do that, then they're not excelling in any way in what it should not be a surprise that there's no bid. And then now the defense has to return the money because we could not find bids. We also have an issue with the reporting of these structures. We have systems, we have bilaterals between us and Armscor, but these measures are not reported to those levels first so that we can agree with them. We see the figures for the first time at the quarterly report, which is too late because that quarterly report must serve with the Secretary for Defense over a week that we must give responses whether we agree or we don't agree. But if these things are done at the level that we are operating with them, we'll be able to say, Armscor, we agree, we don't agree. You didn't make 90 days, you made 200 days. And I can say they do make 200 days, not 90 days, which then forces the Air Force, the Army, the Navy not to be able to execute their mandates because Armscor was not able to execute this. Also, the other thing is acquiring services on contractors who are not excelling in their work. They fail, they delay, hence what you spoke about when you spoke about the presidential aircraft. It was not serviced in time, and none of them was serviceable because of the contractors that Armscor used. So we say Armscor should find ways to penalize or look for alternative suppliers and all that, but they cannot come with 100% measure as if all is rosy. If we fail as a defense, Armscor should also fail. They cannot succeed alone and we fail. What makes them think that, or the auditors on their side think that they are succeeding, is because all the thorny, difficult issues, they bring them back to us. If they see that they are not able to acquire a system because the bidders did not respond, they return it to us and say, here is your requirement. We could not fulfill it, so cancel it from the requirement that you send it to us. So we cancel it to them, we give it back to the Air Force. The Air Force is unhappy because they could not acquire that, but Armscor then remained clean on their system that all what they had was executed. But it doesn't really reflect the truth that it does not include the difficult part, the thorny parts are taken out and they're taken to the services. There is no service today that is happy with the services of Armscor as a result of that. And also the SLA, just on a lighter one, the SLA is not for 4 years, it is for 3 years. The calculation must be made properly there. It's from this financial year to the financial year 2024-25. I think I should stop.
Can I come in?
All right.
If I may.
Sorry, are you done, Chief Director Lebelo?
Yes, I think I'll stop here because my presentation will be the same or similar to that of Armscor, although there are some issues that I wanted to raise, but I think I'll stop here and we can have it.
Yes, no, you have done very well. When I was MEC in one of the departments here in KwaZulu-Natal, it came to a point where I had to, all the levels, level 13 and above, to get their service bonus, I don't know what to call it, approved by myself. I looked at the scores that, the performance scores that they gave each one of them. All of them, they got 3 out of 5. There were 3 and some were above 3. So basically saying, confirming 3 means the department is performing. And then said, look, all of you agree, all the targets were not met. And, you know, you all confirmed that the department as a whole underperformed, but none of you take responsibility for the underperformance. You give each other 3 out of 5 and so on. In that year, I did not approve a single bonus. And I changed the whole thing. The following year, the whole thing, the performance, because I said each one of us collectively contribute to the performance of the department. So you can't claim to have performed when in actual fact, the entity underperformed. So it was in that context. So I am saying this in agreement with what you are saying, that, yeah, and Mr. Murray, and I'm sorry, and Mr. Ryder, it's just that you said you made a good comment. But before that, Secretary, if you wanted to say something.
Yes, Chair. I think maybe just to put things in perspective, Chair, whether it is the Army, it is the Air Force, it is the Navy, or it is the military health services, our structure within the department and within the secretariat is a DEFMAT environment. So in DEFMAT environment, you get representatives that come from all 4 arms of services. And through these colleagues, they are also then experts, and they are the ones that serve as a link between DOD and Armscor. So when we go to Armscor, there would have been some specking down at the levels of the services. It comes to DEFMAT environment, it goes there. Now, Chair, most of these projects that we procure through Armscor, they are multi-year projects. There was a time I actually spent about 3 hours with the colleagues from the DEFMAT environment. And the reason being that with the budget being cut, there were certain things that we've always thought that they were critical for us in the areas where we deploy. But now, because then if you would recall last year, we were given 1 billion rands and to put in the SDA. And the year that we are currently in, we were supposed to be given 1.8 billion, and that didn't happen. Now we had to go back to the drawing board and then say, what are some of the things that we are able to afford? Even to an extent of saying, Chair, we may have been wanting certain number of quantities, but because then the money is not where it is supposed to be, we are not going to be able to even do that. And I think some weeks back, we were sitting and talking about Hoof Easter, where they were saying, even from the Armscor side, to say, we have gone back, We are engaging with the end user, the army. We are looking whether there are some of the specifications we can drop. We are looking at whether we can reduce the numbers, because truth be told is that we have to do everything within the context of what our money can be able to buy us. There are some of the things that are critical that we need to have, and there are some of them we feel that in as much as they are critical, we find ourselves in a situation and say, what can we live with? What can we not live with? You have to choose what is it that you really think you need to have. We have said that. One of the things that I have also at my level, Chair, done is that it doesn't also help us to put money in some of these projects that are multi-year, that we are not guaranteed that the entire amount of money we will have. So let's rather put where we know that if we buy this, we have the money to do that. So when we send out the letters of taskings, which I then have to approve to go through DEFMAT, to go to Armscor, it must be accompanied with a surety that yes, we do have money to buy those things that we want. So some of them, they are important, but we have deferred them simply purely because the money is not there. And then say, what is it that we really need to do?
Sorry, Satef, I can see where you are going. That's not where the issue is. The issue is what task projects have been given to Armscor that they will have to account on at the end of the financial year. They do it.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I agree with that, Chair, but unfortunately, I don't have that off the cuff. But from some of those that were there, we have whittled down to say what are the ones that we need to have. Probably
that's information we're looking for, Satef. No, it's fine.
Yes.
I'm fine with your presentation.
Yes, so what we can do is that we can go back and sit with you. But also one of the things, Chair, that we are trying to encourage is then also to say, look, Armscor at the end of the day is our subsidiary institution. There needs to be that dynamic ongoing interaction between ourselves and Armscor. We can't sit and complain as DOD and say Armscor is not doing that, because DEFMAT must be the one that does that on behalf of the DOD together with Armscor. They are our company. So we need to do that. Actually, at some stage, we had to sit there with CEO Armscor, with all his managers, plus ourselves with all the chiefs of the services. And the main aim, Chair, was precisely to address the issue you're asking about, to say that from all these taskings we are able to give to Armscor, to what extent are they able to perform? Because if then they are going to perform at 40%, then surely one way or the other, it means that we are going to fail somewhere because they are not delivering at the level that we expect them to deliver. And since then, there have been these ongoing interactions. And I think that maybe what we can commit to is to say that let's come with what we had whittled down and say this is what they are, these are the amounts that are involved, this is how far they have come. Because some of these ones, they go back, they are not all of them that are contained here. If you may permit us to do that, Chair, thank you.
Yes, that's what should be presented, which is not presented. Mr. Mare, Mr. Mutle, and Mr. Dennis Rader.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. What the Chief Director has raised is a concern of mine that I think I have raised it in the past, where we look at the KPIs and it's all 95, 100%, 98%, 90%. But when you look at the realities on the ground, and I don't know why the presentation of Armscor didn't go further to what we have, and that's the Air Force aircraft support contract. We know, for instance, that the Gripens was on the ground. We know that even the Falcons was on the ground, the Hawks was on the ground, even the Lynx helicopters was on the ground. If you look at this list of contracts, it seems like all is fine. There's no problems. But still, they got 90 and 95% and 100%. We know for a fact that those contracts was a problem. We know why those aircraft were on the ground. And then we haven't even looked at the Navy vessels. So is it a product of the budget? And I agree with you fully, Chair, that if the department is not performing, how can Armscor perform? I realize that Armscor, their task is a product of what the Defence Force is giving them. And that's why what you have said, what we need from the SecDef is 100% correct, because then you can measure them in terms, for us, the output and the performance and the accountability is not whether Armscor KPIs is 100% or 95%, is whether the South African Defence Force can actually protect South Africa, do have vehicles on the ground, do have aircraft in the sky, and do have vessels on the maritime terrain in the oceans. We know that that's not the fact. And remember, if you go back in history, prior to 94, 95, there was only one organization that was Krijgkorps or Armscor with different divisions and different companies. It was then entangled into an Armscor and a separate Denel. One must really look and see what was the objectives of a Denel, of an Armscor at that stage, and compare what Armscor is doing today with that. And that will also give us a clear picture whether Armscor is value for money. Is it only certain capital projects that they are responsible for? What about all those maintenance contracts that we know is not in place? What about the procurement and the leasing contracts? What about the contracts for the environmentally controlled warehouses? There are so many things that one is asking yourself now, who's responsible for this? Which type of contracts is Armscor responsible for? And if those contracts are not given to Armscor and it's done by the Department of Defense themselves, why is that the case? And is that fair? Is it a duplication of work? Is it taking work from Armscor and doing by the DOD? And if DOD is then actually successful in doing that, is that an indication whether we must really ask the question, do we still need the Armscor as we have it in the format today? Remember the yearly increase, and you have referred to increases when you were the MEC. Every single year, irrespective of the undertakings by CEO and the CFO, they've given bonuses, not only for Armscor staff, but for management and the top management as well, based on these KPIs. But if you compare the KPIs to what our need is for the Defence Force, there's absolutely no correlation. Absolutely no correlation. So somewhere along the line, we must ask ourselves, for instance, the contract for the A-Data, the contract even for Hoefyster, the contract for many of these contracts and the maintenance and the upgrading and dockyard, who's responsible for the upgrading of the frigates and the submarines. We know that in the past there were not money in the SDA for that, but we know that apparently they're doing it. Is it dockyard doing that? Is it from maintenance work that the Navy is actually doing it themselves? Because it seems like dockyard is also not doing what they initially presented to us, what dockyard will be doing. And we must consider all of those things to get to the value for money, because at the end of the financial year, we must see whether this money and how the money of the Department of Defense was prioritized, whether that's value for money, and whether that is actually improving our capability, to defend South Africa's integrity and to assure the safety of our nation. So for instance, now the possibility of the RATEL, but the possibility of the C-130 acquisitions that we read in the media, is that part of their responsibility or not? Who is doing that? And eventually, it is so damn difficult to actually go and see whether Armscor is doing a great job. Currently, there's so many questions and not enough answers. So Armscor is while I value what they do, and under the circumstances, and we all know that there are circumstances of budget, and that is actually constraining them. So the fact that there's not money to do that, I know is not of their fault. However, it is part of DOD. It is part of our budget. And as that, we have to look at that. And for instance, like you said, if it's not 100 and more compared to what we need to deliver, not what they want to deliver on or how they want to measure themselves, is what we need to deliver in actual fact to South Africa. Then you cannot pay bonuses. But bonuses have been paid every single year, despite their promises that they made. So somewhere along the line, if we can have all those projects that they are supposed to be responsible for, I agree with you, Chair. If we can get that, and we can evaluate that list and say, is this all that Armscor must do? Is it too much for Armscor to do? Or is there other things that Armscor should do as well? And we also need to know at that stage, in my opinion, what functions can defense material do on themselves? Whether they are forced to go through Armscor, or whether they can actually do it themselves. We know with less activity in the Defence Force, they might have more time on their hands available to do that. And we need to get that information, and I hope the SecDef will give us that kind of information as well, so that we can really compare apples with apples. Because currently, we're going from year to year, month to month, budget to budget, and we know that the money is not there, and there are things that is happening, and nobody knows the involvement of Armscor. So we cannot even measure them against these things, because we don't know whether they are involved. We don't know whether they are responsible for those maintenance contracts that was not renewed, that the aircraft was on the ground, that the VVIP aircraft were on the ground. Who was responsible for that? And we need to know that. So, I have a lot of questions, sir, but in the context of what you have said and what measure that against, maybe I must keep my other questions for that time, that we can actually compare apples with apples. Thank you very much. You are muted, sir. You are muted, Chair.
Mutle, and then Mr. Raider, in that order, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just worried with the assertion that a failure of the department should be replicated in another entity. But I think this presentation seeks to address those kind of challenges or gaps. Because if indeed there's proper planning and service, whatever agreement with Armscor as to how they should execute on behalf of the department, year in, year out, if they fail, we can be able to point out their failures. But if done haphazardly and agently, and the entity ends up failing, who must we really blame in that regard? All that I'm saying is that if they are able to sit together, so that they identify their needs that Armscor needs to act on, and it is informed on time, it's able to plan on how it's going to execute. Like, for an example, on contracts of maintenance. The last time they reported to us, they indicated that their challenges, contracts were coming to an end, but they made a commitment to say those particular challenges are being addressed. If they are not addressed timeously, obviously they are bound to have challenges. Hence, we've seen the VIP aircraft was grounded, and quite a number of services were not delivered timeously as a result of a gap that was created in terms of contract management. Therefore, Armscor will be liable if those contracts are lying squarely within their responsibility to ensure that they are there, and it happens that they are not there. It will be mischievous, I think, from them if they are given a task or a requirement that they've agreed that they will undertake. As and when they fail, they decide that, no, we cannot execute this, and then we take it back. Therefore, no solution will be provided in that regard to DOD. But it will also be mischievous from the department without a proper planning to just throw things which are outside the agreement that we seek to depict if it's there or not, and expect Armscor to perform miracles. Because these are sensitive and very technical, I want to believe, services that Armscor has to deal with on behalf of the DOD. Therefore, it's not something that you get off the shelf. So planning will be very much important. All parties coming to what actually the SecDef was suggesting, I think it will go a long way. If they plan together and be able to know we are going to need these services, and Armscor prepare timelessly on how they are going to execute on those identified services that are needed by the defense force, I think we'll get somewhere. And of course, I want to make an example with PPE allocated funds. If you recall, Chair, Armscor was at the later stage tasked to procure, I think some of the requirements were from SAMS. And they did not do that. They returned the money. And we asked them, why did they do that? They had to explain about the challenges they encountered. But even before that, if you recall, DOD was refusing to give those funds to Armscor. They wanted to do everything on their own. That tells you that somewhere, somehow, there's a challenge, whether there's a question of mistrust between the two entities, which should not suffice at any given point in time, because Armscor is an entity of the Defense Force that must execute in terms of the act that they are established with. They are carrying out those mandate on behalf of the DOD. Therefore, you can't have a situation where there's mistrust between the two. It's like not trusting, you may not trust your wife, Chair, but not trusting your child that they will do certain things in the household. So it's quite problematic, but if indeed what SecDef is proposing can be done, maybe things will be better in this regard. I'm not sure whether we should say if the books of Armscor are found to be in good standing, therefore, because DOD's books are not in order, therefore, it should be contagious. I think it's being short-sighted. Thank you very much.
Mr. Rader.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairperson. Good evening, everybody. Chair, yeah, so I must admit to having been quite uncomfortable when we first got the presentation, which was showing us the performance against KPIs. But I think it's led to a very interesting discussion. And the reason for my discomfort, Chair, is that those KPIs and targets, etc., fall squarely in the ambit of the portfolio committee, and really not in the space of the joint standing committee. Our mandate is quite different. But I do think that the discussion has been extremely useful to us because of the role that we have in terms of monitoring the preparedness and the equipment of our men and women on the front lines. So I think that the clear question we need to ask is Armscor delivering on what we expect of it? And I think the general consensus is that no, it isn't. And yeah, so Hoefyster is the one that's always mentioned because it's the most obvious, biggest, etc. So, Chair, I think therefore that and you've alluded to it in your comments as well. It's quite clear that the KPIs are not measuring what we want them to measure, because let's face it, your KPIs fulfill a KPA, a key performance area, and those key performance areas must ultimately all work together to fulfill your ultimate mission and your vision, drive you towards your vision. So I think, Chairperson, that therefore one of the decisions of this committee should be is that we request the portfolio committee on defense to, when they do the BRRR, to seriously interrogate those KPIs and make sure that those KPIs, in fact, feed into the vision and mission of the entity, and ultimately feed into the vision and mission of the Department of Defense. Because if those things that we are measuring don't provide us with the outcome that we're hoping to do, it means we're measuring the wrong things, Chair. So I think it is a hard discussion to have. It's not necessarily for this committee to discuss. Well, it is for us to discuss, but I do think that the change needs to come in when the minister sets those KPIs, and with the help of the portfolio committee on defense, which certainly should inform through the BRRR process what those KPIs should be in order to make sure that we're going forward. And I mean, the reality, Chairperson, is that, you know, any new minister, any new MEC, any new MMC, depending on your sphere of government that you're serving, you have limited tools to achieve or to ensure that you can effectively push your vision down onto the department. And one of those tools is, of course, dealing with the policies within your department and influencing those. But more importantly, and we all know that the administration in all spheres of government tend to focus very strongly on issues that are, first of all, measured, and second of all, budgeted for. So if there's no measurement and there's no budget, it's not going to get done. That's the reality, because officials do, you know, effectively what they're told, and the KPAs and the KPIs are politicians telling them what we expect from them. So, Chair, I do think that there's substantial intervention required, and a whole review to make sure that what we're asking people to do, in other words, what we are measuring, is actually what we want them to do. And that's the reality. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I don't see any other hand. I'm sure the colleagues from
Chairperson, it's Admiral Mkondo again.
Admiral Mkondo, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair, as Secretary of Defense, and Honorable Member Marais. Thank you very much for your input. Maybe some of my members that are online now can attest to this. When I'm looking at the KPIs, 100%, 100 out of 100, maybe it's for other services, not in the Navy. It's clear in the Navy, is very clear and visible. There are no ships going to sea, absolutely nothing going to sea. our submarines are alongside rotting and our frigates are rotting there. It's not that we don't have enough funding, but the little that we have, we don't do much. I mean, like, you know, Armscor was supposed to have indicated that. I don't know what the 100% comes from, because that was supposed to measure now the output of Dockyard. There's nothing going out. And I'm surprised. Maybe he might have used another scale on, I don't know what it is. But I can say that we're trying by all means to have meetings with Armscor Dockyard specifically to address submarine repairs and maintenance and frigates. There's absolutely nothing happening there currently. And I'm surprised that there is 185% and all that, probably maybe for other services. That is not coming from us. Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Executive, you now understand why it's critical that we get this information, because there's clearly a discord between what Armscor is reporting as performance and what is actually happening on the ground. This is confirmed by Rear Admiral Kondo. I'm not certain. We're not actually making a judgment on what is being mentioned here, but we are saying in the absence of all the information, it's difficult to, you know, conclude that what we get reported is exactly what is obtaining on the ground. And I'm sure next time we have to now drill down into where we allocated the rent, we are getting the rent value of services. And that's the point we are making. And Executive, I'm not too sure if you still want to come back before I recognize the colleagues.
No, Chair, like I mentioned, we have been engaging with Armscor on an ongoing basis because there has always been a concern in terms of the rate of delivery. So I don't think we want to say that, yes, everything is honky-dory and everything is going the way it's supposed to go. But what I think we want to commit is then to say, let's whittle down all those things, come back to yourself and give you all the necessary information that we can be able to then say on this one, this is what is happening. That's why I was saying that we also have these meetings that we have with Armscor on an ongoing basis, purely because we also felt that there are certain things that are critical, but we're not able to have them. But even some that we wanted to have, we can't have because we can't afford them. So let's come back to yourself and give you that. And I do agree with what the Admiral is saying. It's not actually only the issue of Navy, it's the various services. But I think that will help with giving a bird's eye view picture so that exactly we know where we are at.
So you now understand why we wanted this presentation to be done by the department and not Armscor. Because we wanted this information from the department. You are a client. Are you satisfied with the service, with the level of service you are getting from Armscor in relation to what you have actually asked them to do? But instead, you ask Armscor to come and do the presentation. I thought, man, this is not on. Clearly, the agenda says it's presentation by DOD. So we're yet to get the presentation from the DOD, not from Armscor. Armscor is a service, is providing a service to you, but are you satisfied with the service you are getting? Armscor, they're going to say, well, look, you know, they'll beat their own, they'll beat their own drum. And they're not wrong to do that. But the question is, as the end user, who allocates the funds? Are you getting the service timelessly from Armscor? Or are you committing the amounts to Armscor timelessly so that Armscor is not failed in the performance of their responsibilities? Because it can also be that as well, that when you have money, you commit it very late. When Armscor can no longer deliver 100% in that financial year, and then end up taking the blame from the arms of services. So this is the gap that we were trying to plug. At least the point is made. I'm not going to take it any further than this. I will start with you. Are you done, Chief Director Lebalo? You can move to take.
Yes, sir. I think I'm done. I think I note what the sector said, and I note the comments from the members, and we will come back through the sector to the committee.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And therefore from Armscor.
Take note of your request, and we'll work together with the DOD in that regard. But thank you so much. I've got nothing further to add, Chair.
Thank you so much, sir. All right, colleagues, thank you very much. It looks as though we've covered the two items. Please don't log out because we have this other item to deal with. So colleagues from Armscor, from DOD, SecDef and the team, thank you very much for the discussion this evening. And you are free to leave at any time you wish. So we can then move to the next item. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Good. And then the next item, colleagues, is it's a study group tour, and I also added one item, but simply to remind me, so that I don't forget it. Let me start with it. Maybe let's deal with the study group information. Nandipa, in the meantime, please look for the updated program, please. The last one for the fourth term, so that you have it ready after Velem is done doing his presentation. Velem, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, Chair and members. Just a very quick discussion. As members may recall, we had a study tour planned, and as per the WhatsApp message that was circulated to members and the discussion on the group, there was the original plan was to do it early December, but due to flight constraints, unfortunately, those dates weren't available. There's very, very few flights available, largely due to the FIFA World Cup taking place in Qatar, which means most of the flights leaving from South Africa to the Middle East were quite fully booked. We've made some really good progress in terms of getting in touch with all the embassies and the relevant personnel who are willing to assist us, and we've built contacts with all those people. Nandipa has done some great work in that regard. So administratively, we've made a lot of progress. What we would like to present tonight to members for your consideration is alternative dates, perhaps to get the committee's buy-in on what would be the most appropriate date to do an application for next year. And looking at the options for next year, unfortunately, January poses the similar problems in terms of flight availability. We did liaise with the travel agents. There's very, very limited flights available in January. So looking at Parliament's draft program, which was released this week, the draft program basically at this stage allows for two options in terms of the joint study tour. The first option would be in the April recess. That would be from, for example, the 2nd to the 13th of April. And the big thing to note there for members when you discuss this is that this period falls over the Easter weekend. Now, this doesn't impact on the study tour itself because the countries we visit don't necessarily celebrate Easter, so their work continues as normal. However, it might affect individual members who wish to spend Easter with families back home. So option one can work in April according to Parliament's program. but Easter weekend is in that period. Option 2 then unfortunately moves even further out. It's just in June, leaving perhaps just before the Youth Day on 16th of June and returning 26th of June. So the reason why we bring this to you tonight, Chair and members, is for you to have a discussion on what would be the most feasible, and we will then use that information to continue to liaise with the embassies and hopefully submit an application this year still to Parliament for potential approval. So, Chair, I'll hand back to you. I'll keep this up on the screen. Those are the 2 dates that we as staff propose, and we're welcome. You're welcome to make further input on the dates. Thank you, Chair and members.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, these are the 2 options. Let's decide on one so that they can start putting in applications and make the necessary preparations.
Chairperson, from a, if I may, I think from a temperature point of view, maybe the April one will be best, because that will just be the end of winter in the area where we're going to. So it might be not a bad idea. Then in June, it's also not bad. So for me, it is whether it is April or June. June is just in their summer, high summer. So it's going to be incredibly hot, and especially the areas where we're going to, what we have planned, is, except for Germany, but even there it will get very hot. So one must just keep that in mind. So from that perspective, maybe April is not such a bad idea.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comment? Comrade Thabo, are you okay with the Esters being taken away for this purpose?
Yeah, no, I think April will be much appropriate for me. I'm not sure what other colleagues think of those dates.
Any other comment? Let me just ask a question in this way. Who has a problem with option 1?
Chairperson, I just want to mention, remember, in the past, often with the budget to get that through before the end of June, we sometimes were sitting still in that last week of June to get the all the different budgets of the departments through. So I don't know how the Parliament's program is in that regard. I don't have access to that, but that is sometimes a bit of a challenge in that time of the year.
Okay, where's the problem with the first option, colleagues? It looks as though the first option it's agreeable. There's no objection to it. Let's take the first option, Willem, and run with it. And if for whatever reason we hit another snag, we can then fall on option number 2.
Thank you, Chair. We will continue with the administrative arrangements then for the April option. Just to remind members that this is still subject to parliamentary approval and budgetary approval, but we will do our best and we'll get it in as soon as possible and liaise with members again. Thank you very much, Chair.
It's better if it's option, if it is April, you put in the application now, it means that you can commit the budget even before we start the new financial year. And if there is still money, if there is no money, then of course it will come out of the new financial year. At least we'll still be fine with that as well, because it's early in the new financial year. All right. Mr. Rader?
Thanks, Chair. Chair, noting Dr. Jans van Rensburg's comments, I think he must understand that my bags are packed already, and he mustn't come with us. Parliament must approve. It's his job to get that approval, and the pressure's all on him.
100% with you on that one.
He must not make his problems ours.
Yes, please don't.
We will do our best, Chair. Thank you.
So, Nandipa, can you put up the program so that we look at this? Program. Right. Colleagues, we are on the 10th of November is today. And then next week is the 24th. Is the briefing by the DOD stroke SLA.
No, Chair.
Oh,
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Next week it's the 17th, and we don't have a meeting because the NCOP has taken Parliament. You are right. You are right. So then our next meeting is on the 24th. Thank you very much, Nandip. So we're taking the briefing by DOD Navy on its envisaged role in the context of the National Maritime Security Strategy and requirements to fulfill such functions. But from the presentation today, I got a sense that it's still too early for them to even start to talk about the strategy, because there's no strategy. It's not even in draft, even though in the annual report they said it was a draft. So there's basically nothing.
Person, but what they can do, if I may, what they can do is to indicate to us their perspective of how they see the strategy and their role in it. So that if we can get that prior to actually have the meeting next year to see what they are coming up, because we must understand the Navy's position and their challenges to basically comply with, even if it's just this broad term or broad-based maritime security strategy. Eventually, it will come down to them. They must also tell us, whether they can afford it or whether we must now negotiate with the Department of Transport, to pass on certain funds, or whether National Treasury will provide those funds. And we need to look at their challenges, and I'm afraid there will be quite a lot.
You have captured that, Dr. Willem?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, no, it's fine. So it means that in our letter to them, we must then try and calibrate the topic.
Yeah, just reword it so that we fit into that. But Willem is very clever with that.
Yeah, all right. So, and then, but that's not what I was trying to present. What I was trying to present is on the 2nd of December. 2nd of December, you will recall, colleagues, this was on the 1st. Thursday is the 1st. Hey, Nandipa, why do you have hours now? Thursday is the 1st. Sorry, it's the 1st. But we thought for a close meeting to deal with the issues that we have placed on the program, an evening meeting would not give us sufficient time to deal with them. So we agreed that we'll move it to Friday. Friday is our slot anyway. We moved to Thursday we moved to Thursday evening. In fact, initially we moved to between 12 and 1 because we were running away from using Friday because colleagues had some challenges with the Friday. But this would just make a once-off sacrifice. If you have a challenge in terms of flights, this, that, out of Cape Town, at least this must be one Friday where you make a real sacrifice. So we then meet on Friday from 9 to about 4 or 5. That gives us sufficient time to deal with all the matters. And Nandipa called me this afternoon indicating that the chief of the defense was wanting this to be over 2 days. I said, well, 2 days is asking too much because we don't even know what is it that is going to be on the agenda. But he wants to give us everything, but I don't know what is everything because we can eat it in chunk rather than eat it at a go. Maybe he wants to, take us through all the issues. But this meeting must determine whether we need another one, another closed meeting soon to continue with the issues. He wanted, the chief of the defense said he wanted to be in this meeting because he also wants to bring back the issue of the borderline security. So you must bring it back, Nandipa, when you have a discussion with them, because he feels that the presentation we received previously was not to the level at which you would want to take it. So, so that's the thing, because we really need the discussion on, I mean, you get a flight and illegally entering into our airspace. It lands in Cape Town. Oh. Yeah, now you see, and you say, but we all get surprised that there is a flight in our country. And we need to make them to account on that as well in that close meeting. What happened? How is it that we all got and only transported to answer and not the SNDF? Yet it's the one responsible to protect the airspace. But I'm not raising this as an issue right now, but I'm saying these are matters we need to discuss. How protected are we? Is our airspace? We know the challenges on the land side, but the territorial waters as well. So those are matters we need to have a discussion on. So colleagues, I thought I should just bring these matters up so that you are aware that this is where we're going. Any comment?
Chairperson, if I may, from my side, this is really comes down to, I think, what we've even talked tonight and say, these are the deliverables. These are what we measure whether the Defence Force can actually do the job and whether we have actually succeeded in our oversight work. I will go so far as to say to you, if the chief of the SANDF wants 2 days, he obviously will have a lot of information that he wants to share us. My perspective is, I am available for 2 days, because if that is what he's asking from us to do, and even if it must be that Friday and a Saturday, as you said, that's only a once-off. But whatever is required, we have to do. If it's 2 days, it is 2 days. If you feel that we must do first 1 day and then another day, that's obviously to be considered. But I just feel very strong that we have talked about many things. The minister has talked about many things, and everybody has indicated they want to have an opportunity to really go into the deep things with us. And my view is, if they need 2 days or 1.5 days, that you can fly out on the Saturday afternoon, no problem. If it's in Pretoria, no problem. Whatever it is required for us to go through that, for me, it'll be no problem. That's my commitment.
All right. Honorable Thabo.
Oh, I'm muted. Oh, no. Thanks, Chair. I think, Chair, we must open up our Friday and Saturday. The reason why I'm saying this, all the closed meetings that we had, if you recall, Chair, we were running after time, and we couldn't deliberate on matters extensively because of the limitation of time. looking at those items, and if they really are pleading for us to give them a hearing for 2 days or have an engagement with them for 2 days, let's do that and see how far we can go. But I can tell you, if we are going to squeeze everything in a day, we'll do things rush, and it might end up not serving the actual intended purpose, because these close meetings are not coming very often. So if I want to plead that let's give it at worst a day and a half, or make sure that members are booked later on Saturday, and we are able to try by all means to exhaust all those issues. It's my submission, Chair.
All right, noted. Mr. Reda.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, look, I want to agree with what Mr. Maria and Mr. Mutlu both said. Noting, of course, that the National Assembly will, in all likelihood, rise on the 1st of December. You know, there should be a reasonable opening up of diaries. And, you know, if we are to have any regrets, I'd rather regret that we, you know, spent an extra hour or two with not much to talk about in Cape Town, rather than regretting that we didn't have an opportunity to deal with all the issues that we are, after all, mandated to deal with. So first of all, I want to support that we do it on a Friday, not Thursday, mostly because I have other engagements on the Thursday evening. But to say, yeah, please, the Friday and the Saturday, I think it's not too much to ask at the end of the term, as we're about to go on our constituency period before the end of year break. I think it's a good time to give that last push and to really interrogate the issues and make sure that they're properly aired. And, you know, to not do half a job. Half a job often results in an unsatisfactory outcome. So let's give it all we've got. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Nandipa, what are the challenges that we may encounter? I've heard all the colleagues. Your application was for 1 day. Now there's a request for an additional day. We're all in Cape Town in our flats. The only expense is what? I know you're not dealing with logistics.
It's catering, Chair.
We can share catering between us and the Defence Force. Maybe they can cater for.
Maybe they can provide for the Saturday, Chair.
But you,
Chairperson, it obviously depends on where we will have the closed session, whether it will be at Parliament or whether it will be at the Defence Force facility, for instance, at Youngsfield or Eastern or wherever.
Look, they want us, in fact, the proposal, Mr. Mare, is if they want us to go up to Johannesburg. I mean, to Gauteng, maybe to their base. But I'm looking at the fact that we'll all be in Parliament. Is the last day. I think is a three-line whip for us.
Yeah.
So it means we must fly the following day. Already with that, the half of the day will be gone.
It's gone, yeah. It's gone.
So it's not ideal to leave Cape Town. We must have it in Cape Town if we want to start in the morning.
Yeah.
So everyone flying with them coming down the previous day, night, sleeping there and walking into the meeting in the morning. So that was the plan. That was the plan. So it means that it would be in Cape Town because logistically it supports Cape Town. But let's discuss with them the second day. I don't mind granting them the second day as you are proposing, but let me, the management team, look at what the issues they're bringing up so that we look at them, check if we cannot feed them in 1 day or 1.5 days, so that we have a clear picture of what is it that we are planning to do. Instead of having meetings of over 2 days when we can finish in 1 day, I don't know. But depending on the issues he wants to put on the table.
And then Chair also asked them whether they want to propose a defense force venue. It can be in the castle.
Oh, in Cape Town.
Yeah, in Cape Town. You know, for instance, Esterplaat Air Force Base or Youngsfield Air Force Base or, you know, Wynberg. If, you know, maybe they want to suggest one of that, and then we can discuss with them who will be responsible then for the catering.
Oh, okay. Nandipa, did you hear that?
Yeah, Simonstown
yes,
is also got Simonstown has also got fantastic facilities.
Simonstown has got fantastic facilities, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So in that case, Nandipa, it would mean organizing transport. I'm not too sure if it was factored into the whole thing. I'm sure it was, to transport members on the day from wherever to the venue and back.
No, Chair, in the initial application, there was no transport because members would have used transport, which we do not pay for.
What transport that we do not pay for?
Parliament transport. The
There's
buses,
no parliamentary, no, there are no buses.
The driver from Parliament.
There are no buses on Friday. Remember, we end on Thursday. There will be no buses to Cape Town from the villages to Parliament. Okay.
Well, you are correct. You are correct, sir.
That's the logistics. Those are logistics. Can you attend to those logistics? Our view was that even if we were holding it in Parliament, we would still have required our own transport. And not the buses, there will be no buses on the day. Even if there is, maybe there will be one bus in the morning and no bus back and so on. So that would be the problem.
Chair.
Yes, sir.
Chair, maybe let's give Nandipa a chance to do that and communicate with you timeously if she's encountering challenges.
Any challenge, okay.
Yeah, if there's a challenge, then the DOD can be requested to arrange those transport logistics. I don't think it will be a problem on their side. On
their side, okay. No, it's fine. All right. No, please just work on that. You have heard the colleagues. Colleagues, we're not going to deal with the minutes. We're 8 minutes beyond the time. That was the only set, Nandip.
Chair, Nandipa has unfortunately been kicked out of the system, but yes, there was only one set of minutes. So
one set. We can fade to the next meeting. Colleagues, thank you very much for your time. I think our meeting was productive. Until we meet again.
Thank you very much. It was very, very constructive and very productive. Thank you.
So much.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks, everybody.